Welcome to South Asia. This is J. Reddy, your facilitator, on behalf of South Asia in Maps, which tries to bring the cultural and geographical and historical knowledge of South Asia in maps, icons, and images for your easy grasping, understanding, and articulation, and to know your motherland or this part of the world south of Karakora Mountains in an articulate fashion. We will continue our fascinating journey of exploring the land of five rivers, our great Punjab, west southern side or western side of Sivalik's mountains and north of Marustali or third desert of Rajputana. And in the previous discussions, presentations, we saw Ranjit Singh's Punjab and British Punjab that succeeded Ranjit Singh's Punjab, and the comparison of British Punjab to the Ranjit Singh's Punjab in order to understand the current socio-political events that are happening on the west side of Radcliffe Line or east side of Radcliffe Line. We need to have a proper historical context. Ranjit Singh Empire survived from 1800 to 1849. Sometimes people say 1799 or 1800 or 1801. Depends upon when he conquered Lahore or conquered Amritsar or Holkar and so on. So that is not that critical. We can say around about 1800 to 1849, nearly survived 50 years. Any territory or kingdom area is called a state. State means a particular geographical area. It has a government, ministers, certain laws, regulations, and rules. Even though the state is not synonymous with government, we can broadly say for a practical purpose, a state is a government. State is also used in another sense, that is a province or a territory, that is subdivision of a sovereign state country. So that's not what we are talking about here. So there's many different nuances, so you have to understand the context where we use the word state. Khalsa Raj or Khalsa state or Ranjit Singh state. A state has always internal enemies or contenders. They want to overthrow the existing state. That's called state facing a geographical challenge. Internal challenges, external challenges, enemies, adversaries, friends, territorial annexations, secessions, and all those things. So when you see Ranjit Singh's the time or Ranjit Singh's kingdom from 1800 to 49, who are the British, the contenders, contemporaries, you will get a broader idea. Thus is what the topic of today's discussion. That is Khalsa Raj, Ranjit Singh Sarkar, and Ranjit Singh Maharaja, the Lion of Punjab, who built the Sikh Empire, Sikh Kingdom, Khalsa Kingdom, brick by brick from his Gujranwala Principality or Sukerchakia Principality. The events, the British Governor-Generals. British Governor-Generals were at that time called the Governor-General of Presidency of Fort Williams. That is a big, high-sounding name for Presidency of Bengal. That headquarters at Fort William, east side of River Hooghly. That means the next to the Howrah on the west side of River Hooghly. He was also superior or controlled the presidency of Madras, presidency of Bombay, and so on. As simply a governor-general. Even the Warren Hastings was not the governor-general during the Ranjit Singh time, I have mentioned here. So I look about Warren Hastings, Lord Cornwallis, Jansor, and Lord Wellesley. And the real story starts with Lord Minto, where the Maharaja came in direct contact with the increasing British East India Company Sarkar's domains close to Delhi territory south of Sutlej River. Then Lord Hastings and Ahmed and William Bentinck. Maharaja Ranjit Singh personally met Governor-General of British East India Company, Lord William Bentinck, at Ropnagar, also called Ropar, that is today on the southern side of River Sutlej, not far away from Chandigarh or Ambala. Then we discuss about Ellen Barrow's time and some other minor temporary Governor-General and Lord Hardinge. And it is during Lord Hardinge time, that is after the death of Maharaja, first Sikh war was fought and Skih Kingdom shed lot of territories to the British East India Company Bahadur. Then Lord Dalhousie's time, second war was fought, and eventually the truncated Khalsa Kingdom was annexed to the British East India Company territories. And we just continue a little bit with Lord Canning, and first the major war against the rebellion against the East India Company, the first Sipai mutiny, and so on. So that's what broadly we are going to discuss today. That is Khalsa Raj from 1800 to 1849, Ranjit Singh events and British Governor-Generals. Warren Hastings time, after Battle of Buxar and Treaty of Allahabad, British consolidated their empire, and he ruled 13 years. He's a very powerful the ruler, Governor-General. Under his regime, the Rohilla War was fought. Rohilla-Khand, that is Rampur, Moradabad, Ayonla, and Bijnor, Badon, all these regions, west side of River Ganga, were annexed. Only a residual Rampur was left as a Nawabi. Rohilla War and ring fence. It is Warren Hastings that formulated ring fence. Ring fence means essentially not outrightly annexing the territories but co-opting them. That means invisible British frontier was established that local Maratha rulers simply failed to grasp. That means by the time the Warren Hastings demitted office 85, the British, the rule in India was from Chittagong and East Bengal, West Bengal, Jharkhand, Bihar, crossed the Karmanasha river separating Bihari territories and Uttar Pradesh, United Provinces, and continued Upper Doab, Lower Doab, Audh territories and Ganga. That means Najibabad, Nazina, Moradabad, all these territories, even though they were nominally under the control of Nawab of Audh, they were actually British territories. Same thing happened except small pieces of Cuttack and Balsore, which was under Nagpur Maharaja Holkar's control. The entire northern Sarkars and Coromandel up to the Kanyakumari was under British control. It's called ring fence. That is the ideological, intellectual foundation of understanding that we'll talk some other time. Then, after he died, after he demitted office, Cornwallis became the Governor-General. That 1886-93. Still, the Maharaja Ranjit Singh was young at that time. He was still a ruler of Sukerchakia Misl, headquarters at Gujranwala, that is between Ravi River and Chenab River. Gujranwala east side, there is a Sialkot and Pasrur and Narowal, and the other side like Sheikhpura, Nankana Sahib and so on. Southern side Lahore, Kasur and Amritsar. Northern side Gujarat, Wazirabad and so on. With still small ruler. And then Cornwallis time, the third Mysore war fought. Why we were discussing is you have to have a historical context, and Tipu's territories, usurper of Wadayar kingdom, was taken away a lot, and then Jansore, the non-intervention policy was followed. Second Rohilla war was fought by Rampur. Marathas won a major victory at Kharda region. Kharda is in Marathwada region today. And Nizam was decisively defeated. And when the new Governor-General, Lord Wellesley, came, Lord Wellesley, came in 1998 March, 1798 March. He immediately requested him, and Subsidiary alliance was formed. That means now the local ruler lost independence, external affairs. There is no more sovereign state of Nizam. He accepted Subsidiary alliance, became a subsidy dependent on supreme sovereign state, and he became practically vassal with internal autonomy. Subsidiary alliance was made with Nizam. Fourth Mysore War was found, and residual Wadayar territory was further partitioned and became a princely state, accepted Subsidiary alliance. And second Maratha was what found after Peshawar Bajirao made a treaty of Bassein, almost the same as a Subsidiary alliance, and Scindia, Holkar eventually Holkar and Bhonsle, they're all defeated. At that time, Ranjit Singh started building his kingdom. So when Jaswant Singh Holkar's army entered into Punjab, first time Ranjit Singh territory, he has a difficulty reconciling with the British. That's where he first came in contact with the British time. Then, when Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the kingdom Sukerchakia, started conquering and ventured south of Sutlej to conquer the what is called Cis-Sutlej state, this side of Sutlej. Your pinpoint is Delhi or Indraprastha. That means if you are Indraprastha, Delhi or Cis-Sutlej state, this side of Sutlej, and Trans-Sutlej states, other side of Sutlej, across the Sutlej, like Bangi Misl, Ramgharia Misl, Sukerchakia Misl, and Multan state, Kasur state, and so on. So, when he started, and the Sikh rulers and other local small kingdoms, they asked for the protection of East India Company, and Governor-General Lord Minto sent a powerful army under Nor-General. At the same time, he sent a diplomat called Charles Metcalfe. Charles Metcalfe met Maharaja Ranjit Singh in Amritsar, and they made a treaty called Treaty of Amritsar 1809. That's the formal treaty between the Maharaja and the British East India Company. That means Maharaja is prohibited venturing on the southern side of Sutlej, that is western side of Sutlej. Sutlej, you move like this, so western side is this side, eastern side is that side, northern side or southern side. So he is free to annex or expand. That British didn't worry at that time. So he annexed eventually the Kasur, Atok here and Indus, and Multan, and Kashmir, and Peshawar eventually. So when Lord Hastings came, that is again a long duration, 13 to 23, fought Second Maratha War, and fought Nepalese War and Treaty of Sugauli, and Pindaris, the local bands in Rajputana, central India, were all subdued during the Lord Hastings time. Lord Hastings, here you see the Lord Hastings, is also called Marcus Hastings. Lord Hastings is different from Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings is the first Governor-General. You see Warren. Next is the Lord Hastings or Marcus Hastings. In the Lord Hastings or Marcus Hastings time, British Empire in India, the British Empire in India became British Empire of India. That means entire India is practically, they became their empire. That means afterwards there is less maneuverability for Lord like Maharaja Ranjit Singh in future plans or annexation. If you wanted to look at any local rulers like Rajputs or Marathas and any other Nawabs, even the Islamists were not very hostile to the local rulers. They have the Islamic ideology in their mind, Darul Harb and Darul Islam, Mumins and Kafirs, and Jahili cultures and Islamic Ilami culture, so on. That's a different story. Anyway, he doesn't have any pitative local support to challenge the British rule, either Nepalese or Marathas and Wadayars and so on. So that's very important. Lord Hastings, after the final subduing of Marathas. Then Lord came here to time Burmese war found, and Lord of Yanbu. That means even British Empire in India expanded further. The eastern side of Bengal, Arkan and Rangoon and Mandalay, those regions were annexed. That means for a couple of years Burma was a part of British Indian Empire, loosely in a sense. Then Lord William Bentinck ruled 28 to 35, and during his reign the lot of other like sati prohibition, infanticide prohibition, human sacrifice prohibition. And after his death, the demission of office, Lord Macaulay, he was Thomas Begington Macaulay, was a British intellectual who formulated this idea of Macaulayism by introducing British education, English medium language, taking away local languages and culture and misinterpreting them or interpreting in the way the Britishers wanted, introducing the British education like engineering, sciences, so on. The firm roots were laid for Macaulayism, future further denationalization, deculturalization of large sections of Indian society under subtle manner. That is Macaulayism and engineering education introduced. The important thing excuse me, we need to keep in mind during Bentinck's time is Governor-General Lord Bentinck was also for some time governor of Madras Presidency. Before met Maharaja Ranjit Singh on Sutlej River at a town called Rupnagar or Ropar, that is a few kilometers away from Ambala, that is today's Chandigarh and so on. And the Treaty of Amritsar was extended in other fashion, called Perpetual Friendship Treaty with Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Even though that word perpetual looks very ephemeral, funny and laughing, that's how the linguistically our jurists will write the treaties. The perpetual means until the universe collapse or sun sets down on the planet. A Treaty of Perpetual Friendship, renewed I think during 1830s or so, 31. That even didn't last for 20 more years. That is a different story. But anyway, Maharaja Ranjit Singh met him. Afterwards, Metcalfe, remember Charles Metcalfe was the British diplomat and prominent, the intellectual think tank of East India Company under the time of Lord Minto, met Maharaja Ranjit Singh on Amritsar, and he made the Treaty of Amritsar 1849. He succeeded nearly for 1 year or so after the demission of office by Lord Bentinck, that is Metcalfe here. After Metcalfe demitted his office, and the major Governor-General was Ellenborough. Ellenborough time the Gwalior army rebelled and war was fought, and finally Scindia was subdued. That's a thing. Excuse me. And Ellenborough, we skipped it. After Bentinck, Lord Auckland, very important. During Lord Auckland time in 1838, that is few months before the death of Maharaja, the large-scale anarchy broke down in Afghania after the death of Timur Shah. A lot of his sons competed for power like Shah Shuja, Muhammad Shah, Jaman Shah, and finally the Sadhus Joyce, a subsidiary branch of Durranis, overthrew, and the other Nawab came, and I forgot don't remember the name, and Muhammad and whatever it may be, and tripartite alliance was made because Suja, who was living in Lahore, Ludhiana, south of Sutlej, as a honored guest of British East India Company, and made a treaty with the British and Ranjit Singh called Tripartite Treaty, where large British army was assembled at Firozpur, that is on the banks of Sutlej, west of Ludhiana, and the army was not allowed. Ranjit Singh didn't allow the army because an independent sovereign state to go to Punjab. They took the detour like Bahawalpur, Talpur, Sindh, and ascended into the Bolan Pass, into Quetta, and again ascended Bolan, Kojak Pass, and descended into the Afghani territory and conquered and established Shah Shuja. That happened during the time Tripartite Treaty. Within few months, Maharaja died, and there is a severe defeat of that army. And finally, during the successor's time, the army was defeated. Army was let use the Punjab territory by Maharaja, I think Sher Singh, and came back to a British East India Company during the retreat. A series of anarchy followed in Punjab, and during the Hardinge time, the first Sikh wars were fought, and Treaty of Lahore was made. That means Sikhs ceded their territory in the Jalandhar region to the British, and also the territory they have given because they lacked the money to pay the indemnity, like the north in the mountainous region, the north of Ravi River, and east of Indus, that is Jammu region and Ladakh region, Kashmir. This was all sold to or given to Maharaja Gulab Singh, who came forward to pay that indemnity, and he was designated as a Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir by an independent treaty, where the Khalsa Sarkar ministers were not involved. That was the treaty made between the British East India Company's representatives, Lord Lawrence and Frederick Corrie. That is the Treaty of Amritsar. That's the second treaty. In fact, first treaty was between Ranjit Singh and Metcalfe on behalf of Lord Minto. Second treaty was between the British Governor-General's representatives Corrie and General Corrie and Lord Lawrence. And Treaty of Bhyrowal was made, where the British army will stay in Punjab until the majority is attained by the young ruler Dalip Singh, and a Regency Council was established, and Henry Lawrence was made the regent, that means the virtual de facto ruler of Punjab. That is called ring fencing policy. And when rebellion broke down in Multan by Mulraj, and certain Sikh Sardars rebelled, second war was fought. This war was not fought by the Khalsa army, fought individually. British were spectators looking forward for this, a casus belli or reason to annex the residuary Punjab Khalsa kingdom, truncated kingdom. And Lord Dalhousie announced that the Sikh nation has rebelled against Honorable British East India Company Bahadur, so they decided to annex it. Maharaja Ranjit Singh and his ministers were called to the fort, and he signed a treaty, that's the Treaty of Lahore, ceding the kingdom and becoming a pensioner. He was converted into, later deported to England and made a Christian. So that is during that time, and railways started being introduced in India, and rebellion broke down during the conning time. The important thing is the Sikhs were subdued almost 7-8 years before. Decided Sikh nobility, Sardars, and the ruling elite of Sikh, they decided to support the British. So the Lord John Lawrence was a brother of Henry Lawrence, who demitted office as a regent and a governor, or at that time called, I think, chief commissioner or lieutenant governor. The junior Lawrence, John Lawrence, assembled vast army among the Sikhs and disarmed the Bengal army or Purbiya army or Hindustan army, brought the large army assembled to Delhi and conquered Delhi from the rebels, and that was a major turning point in the failure of Sipai mutiny. And the British Crown took over the entire British India. Now it was no more under the control of the company, East India Company, but a British colony under the Empress Queen Victoria at that time. That is the Government of India Act of 58, then councils were introduced and so on. Excuse me. So, what essentially today we discussed about is the geographical challenges, building of the state, the contemporaries, adversaries the state faces, and Ranjit Singh and the Punjab Khalsa Sarkar from 1800 to 1850 or 1849, events and British Governor-Generals we discussed about today, and we talked predominantly about before Ranjit Singh was small, Warren Hastings, who followed the ring fence policy, and after that, and Lord Cornwallis and Janshaw, and during the Lord Wellesley's time, and the British Empire in India further consolidated by Subsidiary Alliance, and Nizam and the Nawab of Oudh and Wadayar of Mysore all came under the British Subsidiary Alliance position. Even the Peshawar Bajirao too, and a sort of Subsidiary Alliance was established and forced on Scindia, Holkar and Gaikwad and Bhonsle and so on. And then Lord Hastings' time, the Nepalese war was found, and second final Maratha was found, and Peshawar Bajirao was deposed, and the British Empire in India in Lord Hastings or Marquess of Hastings' time became British Empire of India. At that time, the Maharaja Ranjit Singh has a less maneuverability in future challenges. He or his kingdom, his successors would face. He cannot expect any local rulers aiding or sympathizing with his cause. That's what the context we are looking for. Before that, during the Lord Minto's time, Charles Metcalfe came, and Treaty of Amritsar was made, and the kingdom Maharaja cannot venture and move his army south of Sutlej. That was agreed. And major again the ruler was Lord Amhet. Burmese war was fought, and the British territory moved further ebbed into from Chittagong into Arkan and Rangoon, Mandalay, Pegu and all those regions. They further consolidated vast territories. During Lord Bentinck time, 1928 to 35, Lord Bentinck visited Maharaja personally. They both met at Rupnagar on Sutlej River and continued their treaty of perpetual friendship between the Khalsa Sarkar of Ranjit Singh and his successors, future, and British East India Company Bahadur. And it is during the Lord Auckland time, that is few months before Maharaja Ranjit Singh's death, and tripartite alliance was made with the deposed Afghan Amir Shah Suja and British East India Company and Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and tried to reinstate Suja against Dost Muhammad Khan, at that time the ruler of Afghan Amir. Then finally, after the Maharaja died during the regime of Lord Auckland in 1839 June in summer, a natural death, and then few years later, as the kingdom into anarchy, Lord Hardinge time, first Sikh war was fought, and Treaty of Lahore. That means it deprived vast territories from the Khalsa Raj, and mountainous region were detached and given to Maharaja Gulab Singh Dogra, the ruler of Jammu. He became the ruler of Jammu and Kashmir, an independent monarch away from the tutelage of the Khalsa Darbar at Lahore. And second war, Anglo-Sikh war, fought during the time of Lord Dalhousie, and the Skih Kingdom finally annexed and disappeared from the Punjab plains, and Khalsa Sarkar or Sikh Kingdom of Maharaja Ranjit Singh and its successors became the British Punjab. The Sikh Punjab, Khalsa Punjab became British Punjab. Then the war broke down, and canning the Sikh nobility and Sardars, the rulers decided to support the British in India against the putative Mughal ruler Bahadur Shah, and that's where the British friendship with the Sikhs started, further consolidated, pampering of the Sikh community, and further consolidation of a branch of Sikhism called Khalsaism. A sort of separatism was introduced into them during the further British rule. So that's what we discussed today about the Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Khalsa Raj 1801 and events and British governor-generals during Ranjit Singh's time and his successor time. This is J. Reddy, your facilitator in South Asia maps, bringing you the knowledge about South Asia in maps, icons, and images. We always welcome your compliments, criticisms, further subscription of this channel, and encouraging us so that we can spread this knowledge. And we further see you about our fascinating journey, about the land of 5 rivers, Punjab, in future. Thank you very much.